I've always wanted to bang the gong. We're going to try to get started. All right. I'm sorry so many people here. It was really hard to get organized. There's still people coming in, and we're actually still waiting on 2 speakers that apparently are stuck in the massive traffic jam that we have caused. Democracy does not always run smoothly. So that's a heads up that there might be a few hiccups. We might have a few speakers, and the order might change a little bit because we are waiting on people, and there's a big crowd outside. But thank you guys so much for coming. This is amazing, looking out from up here and seeing how large this crowd is, knowing that there's an overflow room behind us that is also full, and a line of people that are going to be waiting outside because so many people wanted to come to this. I also want to thank some of our special guests that are here. I don't think he's here yet, and he might not be able to make it, but Congressman Tom Suozzi said he is going to try. I also want to give him a quick shout out, even though he's not here. We approached him at his open house recently, and he willingly signed a single-payer pledge. So what that said, just so you know, is that when the Democrats retake Congress in 2018, he's going to immediately... All right, he has pledged to immediately and personally sponsor a bill for single payer. So we're going to be moving forward on that. It's going to happen. And while we're giving credit where credit is due, there's another announcement I want to make. State Senator Brooks could not be here today, but we found out about an hour ago that he also just signed a pledge for single payer here in New York. Let's give him a big round of applause. I also want to thank Assemblyman Chuck Lavine, who came in here. He's a sponsor of that bill here in New York. Thank you. And we'll be hearing from him in a little bit as well. Also, a shout out to other organizations that helped us here and have sent speakers. We're going to have a speaker from the LIPC, the Long Island Progressive Coalition. Give them a big round of applause. And we also have a speaker from Physicians for a National Health Plan. They've been fighting this battle for a long time. I also want to thank the Our Revolution organization. How many of you, raise your hand if you signed up here for on Our Revolution for this event? All right, thank you so much. We were planning this event with Our Revolution. We had about, what? Oh, yeah, thank you. Our Revolution, for those of you who don't know, is a national organization that was created by Bernie Sanders after the primary. Yeah. And Long Island Activists is in the process of becoming an affiliate of that group. That's why you saw this event on there. We were planning it with them. We were trying to fill up the room. We had about 100 sign-ups. Then an email went out from Our Revolution, and suddenly 350 people were signed up for the event. So before we move on with the event, I want to give a quick plug to our organization. You see this giant banner behind me. I want to just let you know what Long Island Activist is and what we do. We'd really like to get you guys involved on a local level. So during the primary, obviously there was a big groundswell movement for Bernie Sanders. That happened on Long Island as well. Months before the campaign actually came to New York, actually about a year before that, we were organizing here, starting in the summer of 2015 when Bernie Sanders had a big live stream event, and I showed up thinking there'd be 10 people in a room, a bunch of crazy progressives, and that there just really weren't that many of us. It turned out there were dozens of events. They were all standing room only, and we began to see that there was a real movement afoot. Without any help from the national campaign, we created an organization that got 75,000 signatures to get him on the ballot in New York. We planned hundreds of events. We were flyering all over the place. And that work that was happening took a candidate from 2% to 47% in the polls, just being done by people out on the streets. After the primary ended, a lot of us were pretty disheartened, but we understood that all of us had gotten together. Most of us had never seen each other or met each other before, and yet here we had put together this great family of people who were very dedicated, and we refused to allow that to just disappear. So we decided we were going to move on and rename ourselves. So Long Island for Bernie Sanders became Long Island Activists, and some of our members who were delegates for Bernie Sanders and people that had been campaigning for 2 years. Where are my Bernie delegates here? Please raise your hand, Bernie delegates. We have a few. We decided we were not going to let all this go to waste. So we created this new organization based on what had been Long Island for Bernie. What we are all about is really what the Bernie campaign was all about, this idea of a political revolution. We all know that something feels wrong in this country. Things are not going the way that we want it to go. We know that public policy in no way reflects public opinion. Something is very, very wrong. So that's what we're really dedicated to doing. Our organization is really based on some core principles that I want to just talk about briefly before we move on. One of the figures that we've based everything on is Martin Luther King, who I think was probably the greatest progressive, maybe the greatest American who ever lived. And often in school we just learn about the part where he fought for civil rights for African Americans, and obviously that was a huge deal and it was amazing. But the part that our historians, or at least the kind of history that we deliver in school, has forgotten is that he was also fighting for economic justice. He was also fighting for justice in foreign policy. And he was a radical figure, a figure so radical the FBI had a 19,000-page file on him. Right? Now we worship the man, but we pretend like that half of him didn't even exist. So there's one line that Martin Luther King had that I think really sums up what we are all about. So he once said that our only hope today lies in our ability to recapture the revolutionary spirit and go out into a sometimes hostile world, declaring eternal hostility to poverty, racism, and militarism. And that's what this organization is all about. So if that sounds like you, if that sounds like something you'd like to be part of, please visit our website, longislandactivist.org. Visit us on Facebook. We are a growing organization. We are doing a lot. You can sign up. There's all sorts of informational sheets, and there's tons of events going on. Our mission is to be as grassroots as possible. So for those of you who were part of the Bernie primary, you may have remembered that there was this interactive calendar where you can find events, but you could also become a leader and just create events. We have now recreated that on our website. So if you want to get involved, look on the calendar. There were 44 events this month alone. Right, things are happening. Take a look and get involved. If you think there's something missing, don't complain. Create the event. Become a leader. Make it happen. You are the change you are waiting for, and that's what we're hoping to do on Long Island. Oh, yes. In addition, we've also finally finished the legal paperwork. We are now actually able to collect donations. Up until now, we have been funding this ourselves. Individuals on the steering committee have put in hundreds and hundreds of dollars to pay for venues like this and for materials like this beautiful banner behind us. We would really love for other people to get involved. We're asking for people, if they can, if you want to be involved, a $2.70 a month donation, 1 cup of coffee, right? That's what it takes. If a bunch of people are giving that little bit, we can make a huge difference. If several hundred of us are doing that, there's so much more that we can do. There's really a limit to how much 10 individuals on a steering committee can fund an entire organization. So we'd really like your help with that. If you can, go to our website. There's a spot there to donate. We're not asking for much, but every little bit helps. If you come to our Facebook and you also go onto our website, you'll see that we're also forming committees. We're looking for people to get very involved. If there's a topic that interests you, healthcare committee obviously help with this event. There are all sorts of committees. Please find what your passion is. We don't need everybody to do everything, but if everyone does something, we can really create a lot of change. So please find us online. Please donate if you can. More importantly, we need you to show up and become a leader. This is how democracy happens. Nothing's going to get done in this country unless we start taking to the streets, as people have been doing ever since November. So that's been really beautiful to see. All right, enough of the shameless plug. We're going to move on with, with the event now. So there's an old Chinese saying. It's actually a curse, and it says, "May you live in interesting times." There's no doubt we are living in interesting times. I would love to live in a time where things in this country were going so well for people that we didn't have to get up and have rallies like this and show up at events and marching in the streets and things like that. This clearly is not one of those times, and as a student of history, you kind of realize that those times never exist. That the only time positive change has ever happened in this country is when people have gotten organized and have taken to the streets. So, thank you. I don't think there's any doubt that America's in pretty big trouble right now. We seem to be heading back towards the Gilded Age. If you don't know what that looks like, I suggest you crack open your old textbooks, look in your kids' textbooks. It wasn't a good time. 40% of Americans are living at or near poverty. 60% of Americans have less than $1,000 in the bank. That's one broken car away from a major bankruptcy or crisis. Nowhere is this inequality more clear than in healthcare. We live in the richest country in the world, really the richest country in history, and yet we have 20 million people who have no health insurance at all. We have tens of millions of others who have health insurance, but they can't really afford to use it because their copays and deductibles are so high. These are people that are choosing between paying rent and getting a $700 EpiPen. Right? These are people that are choosing between feeding their children or going to the doctor when they're not feeling well. These are unacceptable choices in a country that is this wealthy. Thank you. Now, I'm really glad we have some media here today. It's really great to see. I wish that our media would also report on those issues of poverty and the struggles of working families half as often as they post on what the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones are. We'd have people in the streets every day. The fact is that these are life and death situations. That's why people are out here. It turns out if you try to take away people's health care, they get angry and they show up. Thousands of people die every year for a lack of health insurance. Thousands of people. Right, this is not a joke. This doesn't happen in any other country, but it happens here every single day. There are people that will die because they didn't get their EpiPen. That's going to happen. This is not a game. Right? There are millions of people who rely on things like that every single day, and they don't have access, or if they have access, they can't actually afford it, which means it's no access at all. Now, unfortunately, it seems like we have many members of Congress that are dedicated to the idea that they can make the situation even worse. We are coming at this from a completely different angle. Our position is clear. Healthcare is a human right. And I think we've mentioned Bernie Sanders before, but I want to take a minute and just thank him. Without Bernie Sanders bringing this to our attention again, bringing this back into the national discussion, right, we wouldn't be talking about this today. That phrase, healthcare is a human right, was just not heard in our political discourse until Bernie Sanders decided to challenge the powers that be. One of my favorite moments during the primary was when Bernie Sanders went on Fox News and he did this town hall with Bret Baier. And Bret Baier challenged him on this issue. He said, where do you see that right coming from? What is the basis of healthcare as a human right? So I might have said something like, you know, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You could probably find a way to justify access to medicine in there. Maybe I would have brought up that in 1948, the United States helped write the UN Declaration of Human Rights, which talks about healthcare as a human right. But Bernie's answer was so much better. He just looked at Bret Baier and he said, because she's a human being. Because she's a human being. Now, I don't know about you, but I would really like to live in a country where that answer is enough. A country where we respect the value and the dignity of a human being, that we're not worried about profits when someone is dying and is in need of a doctor or medicine. We can make that country happen. So today we're going to be talking about two different things. We're going to be discussing federally the issue of the ACA and locally how we're going to push single payer right here in New York. Yeah. Now, while no one thinks the ACA was perfect, and I certainly have my complaints about it as well, the ACA did do some really good things that we need to fight for. Right? The ACA allowed young adults, people I think up to 27, to remain on their parents' health care. That is vital. Putting aside for a moment how sad it is that we live in a country that young adults in their 20s who have tons of college debt cannot now rely on the fact that with that degree they can come out and get a decent job with good wages and health care. Putting that aside, we need to fight to keep that no matter what. There are millions of people that have health care now because they can go on their parents' health care until they're 27. The other major thing that it did is it protected people with pre-existing conditions. God forbid a sick person has the audacity to use their health insurance. That's the end of their health insurance. That being said, the ACA did not go as far as many of us would have liked. It certainly didn't make health care a human right. A human right has neither a copay nor a deductible, so there was still work to do. On the federal level, obviously, there's very little that we can do with this Congress. We know the Republicans want to get rid of ACA. They voted to overthrow it 150,000 times. They seem to have nothing to do. Of course, they never had a replacement plan. Now we're learning the details of that, and you're going to hear a little bit about that in a few minutes. But we have to fight to protect that. We need to fight. We need to put pressure on those people, even those who are too cowardly to hold real town halls, like Mr. Zeldin and Mr. King. We invited them here as well, but maybe if we boo loud enough, they can hear us wherever they're hiding. Instead, they decided to do telephone town halls. I'm sure the questions were screened. Absolutely. Let them hear. Boo. It's ridiculous. We need to apply as much pressure as we can. It's been so heartening to see all the different rallies and events that have been going on, people who are showing up and letting their congressmen know that this is unacceptable. We are not going to allow millions of people to lose what little insurance they have. It's not going to happen. We are going to fight back. But that being said, there's actually a lot we can do right here in New York. People often forget that we can act locally. Not everything happens in Congress. There are lots of things that we can do on the local level and here in Albany. And that's one of the big things we're here to talk about today. Single payer is a real possibility here in New York. There is a bill right now in Albany. It has already passed the Assembly last year. It will likely pass the Assembly again this year. The problem is state Senate. We need to let our state senators know that they are going to vote for this or they are not going to be our state senators for very much longer. Once the speakers are done, the second half of this meeting is going to involve getting you guys into breakout groups by state senate district. That's why we held you guys up for so long with the sign-ups. It's really important that we are acting locally. We need to be mobilizing. It's not just Zeldin and King that need to be protested. We need to put pressure on anybody who is going to do anything that is going to prevent healthcare from being a human right. There's a common expression that the states are the laboratories of democracy. So many of the great things that have happened in this country happened at the state level first, whether it was women's suffrage, whether it was gay marriage, and in this case, we're going to make it single-payer health care. We are going to turn New York into a progressive haven where we are going to show the country what real progressive policy can do to make people's lives better. There have already been signs of this happening. We saw the Fight for 15 win in Albany. We saw paid sick leave win in Albany. Governor Cuomo stood with Bernie Sanders and recently put out a plan for free SUNY tuition for anybody in the state of New York. We're going to be pushing for that, and we're going to push for single payer. We can make this happen. We can show people how it works, and then they're no longer going to be able to go to these lies and propaganda that they like to spout about how it doesn't work. We'll be showing them here every single day. I don't think they heard that in Albany. Maybe a little louder this time. But I'm not going to lie, it's obviously going to be a lot of work. It may take more than a year or two to get this done. So one of the big things that we need to do, and part of what we're going to be planning when we get into the breakout groups, is how we deal with the misinformation that's been put out there by those who basically serve the needs of big pharma and the big insurance companies. They put profit before people, and they are spreading information that discourages people. They don't even want to hear what single payer is because they've been told so many lies about it. So let's talk about some of those lies they've been told. One of their favorite ones is that this is completely pie in the sky. It's unaffordable. It'll cost $100 trillion per person per day. Our deficit will be $1 gazillion in a day. They will say that right in the face of people that know that other countries are doing it and are doing it for far less per person than we are. We know the truth. It's happening right to our border in the north. One of our speakers today is going to talk about her experience in Canada with single payer so we can see what it really is all about. They'll also tell us, we don't want to change our system. It's the best system in the world. Anything we do will make it worse. Well, the World Health Organization says it's number 32 in the world, and that almost everyone that's in front of us is a single-payer system. So we know that to be a lie as well. Lower costs and better outcomes. Another one of their favorite lines is they'll be rationing. Now, yeah, so that's a really interesting point, as if 20 million people without any insurance at all isn't rationing. As if people having insurance and not being able to afford to use it isn't a form of rationing. As if your insurance company rejecting your claim because it's going to cost too much isn't rationing. That sounds a hell of a lot like rationing to me. At a recent debate, Ted Cruz, I hesitate to take a line from Mr. Trump, but Lion Ted lied quite a bit about single payer the other day during a debate with Bernie Sanders, where he said thousands of Canadians are crossing the border to the US every year so they can have their procedures. It's true, it's thousands out of 35 million. That makes up roughly 1/2 of 1%. Somehow that's a convincing piece of evidence. Imagine what would happen if Canada would open up their system to us and said, come to Canada, we'll let you use our single-payer system, it's free. So many people would flood the border, Canada would be building a wall and making America pay for it. There's no denying the facts anymore. The question is, can we make a message that actually wins? Can we overcome the propaganda and the lies? Yes, we can. But we are fighting against a system that is basically a pay-for-play system where they've legalized bribery, and the health insurance companies and big pharma are buying up legislation. So we're going to have to fight back hard. Are you ready to join with us here in New York and show what we can do? Great. So we're going to start inviting some of the speakers up here. Our first speaker, well, first I'm going to check to see it because I haven't seen him walk in and he was a maybe. Is Congressman Suozzi here? Does anyone see, is Mr. Suozzi? No. All right. He was very busy. He said he was going to try to make it. Maybe he'll show up later and we can squeeze him in at the end. All right, so one of our other speakers is Doreen DiLeonardo. She is the host of the Progressive Union radio show, and she has been doing a lot of work looking into the Republican replacement plan for ACA, which some information has come out on recently. She is also a cancer survivor, so she knows quite a bit about the importance of the healthcare system for people who are actually ill and would have these pre-existing conditions. So if Doreen would join us here on the stage, please.
Wow, there's a lot of people here, and I'm happy to be here. I'm thanking Ron for everything that he's doing. I think his presentation was great. As he said, my husband and I, Tony, co-host the Progressive Union radio show. We started in 2012. Part of why we started it is because we felt that the media was very right, slanted to the right, and we felt that the left needed a voice. I'm here today to make some news, and I really want you to pay attention because the media and a lot of us get very distracted by Donald Trump, every tweet and everything he says. In the meantime, the Republicans are using him as a distraction. Because a lot of what we're worried about here, they're plotting to do worse to us, and nobody's reporting it. Yesterday, Politico, on a Saturday night, released a copy of the Republicans' replacement plan for Obamacare. And as I suspected, it has been taken from our new Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price's bill, Dr. Death, his 2015 bill, Empowering Patients First. Don't you love the flowery language they always use? There's nothing about patients first. So they're plotting a robbery, and the first part of the robbery that's going to be committed by them, the victims are going to be all of you. And it's not just going to be the people that are on the ACA now. It's going to affect about 85% of us. The way that they're going to fund their plan is by taxing the insurance you get from your job. Yes. They are going to tax the insurance that you get from your employer. Oh, that went out the window. You see, Obamacare, as you all know, is funded by raising the taxes a little bit for the top 1%. But those are their donors. So they want to give them that money back that they don't even know they don't have. So what are they going to do? They're going to tax us, the hardworking American people they keep talking about. That's true. So they've been hiding the plan. The Democrats keep saying they don't have a plan, right? The media keeps saying they don't have a plan. But they have a plan. They've always had Price's plan. They gave him a big job. He had over 80 co-sponsors. So that's the plan. And now we're finding out it is. They're also going to change how they structure the vouchers that they give you to get care. They're going to favor age over income. So I read in the New York Times the other day, the writer used a great example. She said Rex Tillerson, who's our Secretary of State, who is wealthy, he'll get a big voucher, but the guy that works at Starbucks who's 24, he's not going to get so much. So they're diverting the money. You know, they're always saying that we're doing that. We're giving all the money to the poor people and taking away from the hardworking people. They're projectors. Like Ron said about rationing care, how they say that, you know, single payer is bad. They project what they're going to do on what we're going to do. So everybody here, raise your hand if you get your insurance from your job, or your spouse gets the insurance and you get it from your job. So that's really almost everybody. So that's not 20 million people. That's almost everybody. So who here likes more taxes? Who likes that? I didn't think so. So what do we do now? Like, we know this. Politico reported it. You can go to their website. And they're one of the ones that were banned, by the way, from the press briefing. I wonder why. And God bless whoever leaked the plan, because we talk about it, but the mainstream media is not. So whoever got fired from leaking the plan, God bless you, you're a patriot. So what could we do? So what we should do, and I've been talking to Congressman Suozzi. I've talked to him twice, and I gave this presentation to him, and I thought it was a winning argument. Nobody likes taxes. Get on the House floor and talk about their plan. What are you waiting for? Chuck Schumer? It's time to change. We have to fight. So if all of you that live in all different districts take this information and bring it to your friends, even your Republican friends, because I guarantee they don't want to pay more taxes. And the article's right here, and they can get Price's plan online. I got it. You need to tell your congresspeople, your senators, that they need to denounce this plan, that it is an increase on taxes. And the taxes, remember, are going to go to your employer too, because they have to pay taxes on your earnings. So small business gets hurt. So you're not rewarding work. You're punishing people for working, having a job, and having health insurance.
Tell politicians that you'll primary them.
Well, of course, that would be the next step. But the problem is that if this happens and we get taxed on the value of our health insurance that we get, which probably none of us know how much our employers pay. It could be $20,000, $30,000 for a family easily, right? Do you want to pay those taxes? I don't. And I don't think that we should be funding a plan that is actually worse than what we have now. So, and they're hiding it. If it was such a good plan, they wouldn't be hiding it. So you need to tell your congressperson that you want to see them en masse. I mean, if we have indivisible groups here and Move On and all these different organizations, go back to your people and say, we need to do this Monday, because they're going to start moving this. Once it's done, we're not going to be able to undo it. They only need 50 votes to make these changes. So it needs to be said on the House floor, maybe go on one of the shows possibly, and talk about the fact that their plan is higher taxes. And it'll be over. They'll lose, we'll win. Then we can move on to single payer. But we don't have single payer yet. We can't let them take away our health insurance from our jobs. So that was the main reason I came here today, because I know not everybody's going to read Politico. I know tomorrow is going to be Trump all day long about his little speech to Congress. And the Republicans love it, because there's their shiny object while they commit robbery, because they're after the rest of it. If you go and read Price's bill, they're going to make Medicare a voucher program. They're going to make Medicaid a block grant program, and that affects half the kids in the country, people that are disabled, old people. It's all bad. The entire bill is all bad, and it's there. It's there. Every time they say that there's no plan, I just scream at the TV, and I could no longer scream at the TV anymore. So if you want to follow us on Facebook, I'm going to do some shameless promoting. We are the Progressive Union. We are on Facebook. We're on Twitter, Progressive U. We are on iTunes. And if you want to reach out to me, my name is Doreen DiLeonardo. You need any help organizing or anything at all, I'm at your disposal. I'm with you. We have to fight these Republicans. We can't let them take everything away from us. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Doreen. All right, next, I'd like to call Assemblyman Chuck Lavine, who's one of the co-sponsors of our single-payer bill right here in New York. Big round of applause.
Let's hear it for Ron and Judy Gardner and Long Island activists. And I'm going to ask you now, because I'm going to say something, but I certainly am hoping, I'm trusting the response is going to be a resounding series of boos. But I think we ought to take a moment to reflect on the fact that we ought to thank Donald J. Trump for awakening the sleeping giant and filling these auditoriums. Boo! I think it's also fitting that we are gathered here today right up on the north shore of Long Island. Okay, that's enough booze. It's enough booze. He gets the point. And Thomas R. Suozzi, my friend and actual neighbor, because we live a couple of houses apart, is here as well. So, good we're also in a Unitarian Universalist church, because this is, after all, the home of many dangerous free thinkers, and we want to thank them. And very fitting that we're here on this north shore of Long Island, because I think we ought to remember that during the Revolutionary War, from Setauket all the way to Tom and my hometown of Glen Cove, which was then called Mosquito Cove, and throughout Huntington and throughout the town of Oyster Bay, or the hamlet of Oyster Bay, this was rebel country. And General John Burgoyne, King George III's top generals, one of his top generals, and the head of the most modern, most efficient, most sophisticated army in the world, came to the United States, and, or wasn't the United States, the colonies, and was having trouble suppressing this rebellion. And his quote was, "You Americans, you are certainly a rebellious race of people, and you are, and you ought to give yourselves a round of applause." And I could not be happier than to be here with you this afternoon. Now, we have passed single payer in the New York State Assembly. I'm on the Health Committee, and we've passed it through the Health Committee. And this is, although sometimes I think the only no-brainers in Albany are my colleagues and myself, this is a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer, a complete no-brainer. Our challenge is, however, that this will not see and has not seen the light of day in the New York State Senate, which is Republican-dominated. Now, I want to share a little story with you, and it goes back to the evening when we finally passed marriage equality in New York State. And we had, and this, of course, this is very personal to me, and this should be personal to everyone. But in my own family, I have a brother who is gay. I lost a brother-in-law who was like a brother to AIDS-related illness just before the modern medical treatments were available. I believe my brother and my brother-in-law and your brothers and sisters and our brother-in-laws and our parents deserve equal rights, equal human rights. So this is all personal. If this wasn't personal, you all wouldn't be here today. It is personal. Those of us who believe in America and the American dream know how personal this is, and that's why we are here. But the evening that we finally passed marriage equality, there were a lot of parties, and some of my Republican colleagues who voted against it joined us because they could not have been happier. One of the state senators who voted against it, who's someone I know, an elderly gentleman, confided in me that evening that he will always regret having voted against that bill, because he knew he'd be kicked out of office if he voted for it. So there's a woman in the back of the room who shouted out something about primarying people. Well, it's not so easy these days, unfortunately, to primary in the Republican Party, because the Republican Party has lost its Rockefeller version. It's lost its progressive version. And let's remember just for a moment that when abortion became legal in New York State, that was 3 years. That was 3 years. Yeah, I think there should be some applause for this, but hold on one second, because the applause ought to go where it's really deserved. That was 3 years before Roe versus Wade. That was a Republican governor, Rockefeller, a Republican assembly, and a Republican state senate. One way or another, yes. One way or another, we've got to get back to the point where both political parties support and fight for what you're fighting for, which is human rights. So my friend, my Republican friend, who confided in me that he would always regret having to vote against his conscience, well, he did that because he was afraid. Our organizing, through Long Island Progressive Coalition, through Long Island activists, through all these other groups, ad hoc, that are springing up throughout this nation, is going to be the vehicle through which we are going to be able to challenge those who stand in the way of human rights. So, it's a destructive and it's a nihilistic political philosophy that's going to ruin the Affordable Care Act. It's attempted to ruin it from the day it was passed. And it's based on lies, and each and every one of us here today, us brave isn't the right word, superhero-esque, brave and courageous survivors of the massacre at Bowling Green know what lies are. We know 20 to 30 million Americans are going to lose their insurance. We know the tragedy that will flow from that. We're going to return to the days of pre-existing conditions robbing people of the ability to have health care. You're on your own, pure and simple. You're on your own. We're going to go back to the days when there were lifetime caps on insurance. That is, if someone had a serious medical condition, at some point they would simply be cut off. No more insurance. And I'll share a little secret with you, and you know it. When that happens, we all pay, one way or another, for their treatment. We all pay. Women are going to pay more for the identical coverage. Yeah, because you're on your own. Lady, you're on your own. Young adults up to 26, you're no longer covered on your parents' insurance. You're on your own. Yesterday, at the conservative gathering, CPAC, our president... Oh, all right, so let me go off a little bit. When my son was little, I used to take him, actually my father-in-law used to take him to professional wrestling at Madison Square Garden. And we would always get the cheapest seats, so we would be sitting at the very top of the garden. And I would look around at all these people who were there. Many of them believed what they saw was real, and I would think to myself, thank God for professional wrestling, or all these people would be loose. So I think we ought to thank the conservatives for gathering together yesterday. At least they weren't running loose throughout the country. But we know the lies. Ron, I give you permission to steal that one. After all, I'm stealing the one about the Canadians and the wall from you. But we know the lies that are being told. And we know that President Trump said the Affordable Care Act robbed people of their insurance. But we know that that is just another lie. We know that more than 20 million people were able to be insured, thank goodness, for so-called Obamacare. We know that there are a record low number of people in the country who are uninsured. It is 10.9% of our American public. It's the lowest it's ever been. Now, Trump did say that some plans were canceled. Well, some plans were, because they were deficient plans. They were illusory plans. Now, what Trump and his colleagues, his Confederates, want to do is this. They want to allow us New Yorkers to be able to go into a market and buy insurance from other states. New York State is not going to allow that to happen. We will demand, because New York State controls its insurance products, we will demand that any insurance product sold in this state has to meet the minimal requirements that protect citizens, or citizens simply get ripped off by paying for insurance that doesn't work. And those are the kinds of insurance policies that people lost thanks to the Affordable Care Act. So, Trump care, heaven forbid. Heaven forbid. So, whoever said that, we got to get them to run for office. But Tom, we don't want them to primary you, and we don't want them to primary me. But here is our issue. We're a couple of miles away from Sagamore Hill. When Theodore Roosevelt was president of the United States, he fought for a type of health care. But 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, that was for the concept of insurance. For 40 years after he was elected, more conservative leaders of this country fought against that. And we were left in a horrible, horrible position where people simply didn't have health care. In fact, when JFK was campaigning for president back in 1960, he was appalled by the lack of health care that he saw when he traveled in Appalachia and poor parts of this nation. Harry Truman, 40 years after Theodore Roosevelt, fought for universal health care in the Fair Deal of 1949. That was his proposal. Senator Howard Taft, the Ohio Republican, accused him of being a socialist, that this was socialized medicine. It's a human right. It is a human right. And like most human rights, it's not simply easy to define them, but we know what they are. We know what the patriots who fought against King George III were fighting for. We know that this is about human dignity. Billions had been spent in an effort to derail Obamacare. A lot of economists think those billions of dollars spent simply increased enrollment in Obamacare. I'm almost ready to stop speaking to you, but I want to bring to your attention a guy from my native Midwest. He's an Iowan. And his name is Chris Peterson. And he spoke at a forum that Senator Chuck Grassley held in Iowa just a couple of days ago. And this is what he said to Grassley. And he's not a paid protester. He's a hog farmer. He said, "With all due respect, sir," these are his words, "you're the man," meaning Grassley, "you're the man that talked about death panels. But we're going to create one big death panel in the United States of America because people are going to die because they won't be able to get insurance." And you'll remember that back in 2009, it was Senator Chuck Grassley who used his full senatorial stature to talk about death panels, and he referred to pulling the plug on Grandma. Well, I'm here today because my grandmother survived the pogrom by hiding in a hay wagon in her native Tsarist Russia, and no one could have loved America more. And she told me of what it was like 100 years ago in 1918 when this flu pandemic swept the entire world, and between 50 and 100 million American people died worldwide. And she was living in Chicago. It was 5% of the world's population that died because of this flu pandemic just after World War I. And my grandma told me that in Chicago, where she lived, and of course there was no such thing as health insurance. There was hardly any health care. She said that the bodies used to be piled up on the street corners like, and these are her words, cordwood, like lumber. And she said people didn't know what to do, and they would have to wait for the city of Chicago to come in with wagons to take these bodies away. Well, that's not that long ago, my friends. It's not that long. It's a blink in time in human history. We stand together, you rebellious Americans, we all stand together to demand the human right of health care. And we stand together if we don't stand together, we will be lost. This is a fight for our families. It's a fight for our communities. And just as you and I will fight for our families, you and I will fight for our communities, because our communities are nothing more. They are nothing less than combinations of our families. We are now 35 or 36 years since the first days of the Reagan administration into a political philosophy that says, oh, the government isn't the solution. This is what he said when he was sworn into office. Day one, government's not the solution. Government's the problem. Government's your enemy. Well, you and I will fight for our families. We'll fight for our communities. It's damn well time we better stand up and fight for our government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assemblyman Lavine. That brings to mind a quick analogy that I once heard. It's true, once Republicans were actual progressives and put in place policies that would really help people. Now they seem so wedded to the idea of the invisible hand of the free market. They're not even noticing that invisible hand is starting to wrap its fingers around the throats of so many of the American people. We are going to fight back. And so, a few minutes ago, you guys heard me give a shout out to Congressman Tom Suozzi. A few minutes ago, he arrived. Please give him a big round of applause. As I said earlier, we met with him about a month ago, and he was grateful to sign our pledge to pass a single-payer bill to personally sponsor it. The second Democrats retake Congress. So I'd like to ask Tom Suozzi if he'd like to come up and say a few words. Big round of applause for Tom Suozzi.
Thank you. You look good. This is really a very, Chuck, that was one of the best speeches I ever heard you gave. Give Chuck another round of applause. This is such an exciting time in our history. I mean, I've been involved in politics my entire life. My father was born in Italy, came to the United States as a young boy, first kid to go to college, fought in World War II as a navigator on a B-24, and came back and went to Harvard Law School on the GI Bill. And he lived a great American dream, and he was involved in politics, running for city court judge of Glen Cove when he was 28 years old, the youngest judge in the history of New York State. And so I grew up around politics, and it's been a big part of my life. This is the most exciting time in politics in our nation's history. Now, I know that many of us are scared, and there's a lot of fear of chaos that's going on. But Emanuel Cleaver, who's a congressman from Kansas City, who happens to be an African-American minister as well, gave a speech to the Democrats the other day and said, you know, out of chaos, you can really find a blessing. And this engagement and involvement of people right now is a blessing, because our democracy hasn't been working very well, because people have not been participating in it. And we need people energized and people excited to make this democracy work. How many of you, how many,
people hosting meetings, including yourself, who show up, not like our congressman on the South Shore, who won't meet with us.
thank you. We had a beautiful town hall meeting the other night. It was I forget. I'm not sure the exact number, but we had at least 450 people in the room. A lot of people got turned away. For those of you that turned away, I'm sorry. It was too crowded. We had 6,500 people that viewed it on Facebook. Who was at the town hall meeting the other night? Raise your hand if you were at my town hall meeting. Who viewed it on Facebook? Who don't really care what I have to say? How many of you have never been to a political event before today? Raise your hand. I mean, that's amazing. That's remarkable. We love you. Democracy does not work without competition. It has to be a battle of ideas over, I've got a better idea than you do, and you battle out over the power of ideas. I can do it for a better price. I can do it more cheaply. I can do it more effectively. I'll help more people. But people have to be participating in that battle in order for it to work. Arthur Schlesinger wrote a book back in the 1980s called Cycles in American History, and he talked about how every 30 years we swing back and forth from self-interest, which he described as conservatism, to public interest, which he described as liberalism. And he said, if you look at history, look at the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, Hoover, and then 30 years later, 1950s, Eisenhower, the Quiet Generation, 1980s, Ronald Reagan. Arguably, we're just finishing up, hopefully, that movement, the 2010s. Let's hope he was right. But people are not satisfied with self-interest. People are not fulfilled by self-interest. It doesn't work over a long period of time. And if you look at history in the United States of America, people move towards public interest. So you saw it in the 30s, and you saw it in the 40s, and you had the ultimate public interest taking place with the Depression and then World War II. But you know what? That stuff's exhausting. And people get exhausted from being involved in public interest, and they kind of pull back, and they can't take it anymore. And you go back to that self-interest period, but it's not fulfilling. And then you see after the 50s, that self-interest period, you see the 60s and the 70s, and you see the civil rights movement and the women's movement and the environmental movement and all the things that brought people into the public. But it's not always positive things that are the public interest. You saw Vietnam, and you saw Watergate, and you know what? That's exhausting, and people retreat back in again, and they just worry about, I gotta take care of my kids, I gotta take care of my family, I gotta pay my bills, I don't have time for all that stuff. And you saw that in the 80s. And I would argue that we're in a period right now where people are getting back into public interest again, where it's the beginning of a movement that's not gonna dissipate. You know, people got exhausted after September 11th of 2001. They got exhausted from, quite frankly, involvement. The intensity of Barack Obama's first election was exhausting because there's so much energy behind it. And then the financial crash, it was exhausting. People have retreated back in. It's one of the reasons we saw the Tea Party happen and the conservative movement that's been happening. But now we're starting to come out of that again, and we're starting to see the public interest again. We have to really grab hold of this opportunity and utilize this energy in a very positive way. So I'm not going to speak for a long time. I'm sorry I'm not doing enough rally stuff. I apologize. I believe that health care is a human right. I believe as many of you have spoken about already, I'm sure before I got here, and certainly in Chuck's remarks, that this is a matter of life and death for many families right now. And we have to do a couple things. First thing we have to do is protect the Affordable Care Act. That's the first thing we've got to do. And there seems to be a great energy behind doing that. But we have to also improve upon the Affordable Care Act, because there are problems with the Affordable Care Act. The insurance companies, the pharmaceutical drug companies had much too much say in the Affordable Care Act, and we're paying the price for it, and people are suffering because of it. There are problems with the Affordable Care Act. I campaigned on mend it, don't end it. I mean, there are problems. We can't say there's no problems with it. There are problems with it. We got to fix those problems. But the first fight is we have to protect it. The second fight is we have to improve upon it. And the third fight is to fight for universal health care. So we've got to be... But we have to be organized. We have to, it's a long struggle. It's a long battle. It's not like it is in the movies, okay? When I was young, I thought it was like it was in the movies. You know, you get up there, you give a speech, the band plays, dun, 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 dun. You walk every day, wall, holding hands, and it's over. We did it. Doesn't work that way. It's a long, long battle. But if you organize and you keep on fighting, and if you're fighting for the truth, if you're fighting for what is the right answer, you will win the battle in the long run. So, I want you to know that I stand with you, and I told Ronnie, I said, I don't know if I can make it. I'm so exhausted. I got so much stuff going on. But I wanted to be here with you today because I know how important the work you're doing is, and I want to encourage you, and I want to encourage you to continue to organize. Get involved with my New York's 3rd will be heard, which is for my 3rd congressional district. But I want to just close with a quick story to give you a little bit of uplift, okay? So when I was did I tell this story the other day? I mean, I told this the other day. When I was a little bit younger, and our children were younger, Caroline and Joe, we have Caroline, Joe, and Michael. Michael wasn't born yet. Caroline and Joe, we were walking through the 200-acre nature preserve in Glen Cove down the street from Chuck's house and my house. And we saw a red-tailed hawk fly through the canopy of the trees. And we're like, wow, look at that. Red-tailed hawk, isn't that so beautiful? And then we went down to the waterfront on the Long Island Sound on the Wellwood Nature Preserve. And we saw an osprey. And the osprey dove into the water and captured a fish and brought the fish and landed in its nest to feed the other osprey that were there. And I thought to myself, I don't remember seeing those birds there when I was a kid. And is that because I was a kid and I wasn't paying attention, or is that because those birds weren't there? So I got home and I called up the Audubon Society and I said, you know, I was born in 1962 and I grew up in this area and I used to hike in these woods, and I don't remember seeing those birds. Is that because I was a kid and I wasn't paying attention, or is that because those birds weren't there? They said, no, those birds weren't there. They'd all been killed off by DDT. And it took Rachel Carson and Silent Spring, and it took the organized environmental movement of the 60s and the 70s.
60s, yeah.
Peace, baby. So it took that movement. But you know, things don't necessarily always happen in a year. And it doesn't always happen in 2 years. And sometimes it takes 5 years, and sometimes it takes 20 years. But if you keep on fighting and keep on pushing, the world will be better, and you will win the fights that you need to win to make this country the best it could possibly be. Thank you very much, everybody. What you're doing is wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, are any of you actually Unitarians? Are any of you actually Unitarians? Okay. My sister is a Unitarian minister, I want you to know. She went to Harvard Divinity School, and she's a Unitarian minister up in Massachusetts. So we love the UUs also. Thank you very much, everybody.
And it's a great segue because I definitely forgot to thank the UU for letting us host this here. The UU is an amazing organization. It's fabulous. All right, so we just have a couple of speakers left, and then we're going to be going into those breakout groups and organizing. So the next speaker comes from a local progressive organization, and I think they deserve a big shout out because speaking for myself, for a long time, I had pretty much given up on the political process. I had come to believe that the people don't really have a say. The democracy is just really a farce in some way. And it was really Bernie Sanders that brought me back into politics and getting involved. Yes, Bernie. But as much as we need to thank Bernie for stuff like that, we also need to thank the people that, while people like me were personally disheartened and didn't get involved, there were others who didn't give up and were fighting the whole time. One of those local groups is the LIPC, and we have a speaker, Casey Alvey from the LIPC, to speak to us right now. Big round of applause, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today and also for organizing this really fantastic event. So a big thank you to the Long Island activists for really building this grassroots power and making this kind of event happen. So my name is Casey Alvey. I'm a board member with the Long Island Progressive Coalition, and we are a community-based, citizen-led organization that's been working to fight for racial, economic, social, environmental justice for the past 37 years. And we are a multi-issue organization, and we are part of the Long Island Coalition to protect our health care. And at the end of the day, this fight is about protecting people's lives. Whether or not people have access to affordable, quality health care is a moral issue. And to be honest, I'm angry that we need to be here. I'm angry that we need to fight. I'm angry that we need to fight for the basic dignities of our communities and our families. And it is abundantly clear that Trump and congressional Republicans who are committed to dismantling the Affordable Care Act have an utter disregard for the lives of millions of Americans, and that is unacceptable. So it's folks like you getting involved, plugging into actions, holding our elected officials accountable is what it's going to take to build the progressive movement that we need to reclaim our power. And we are going to fight back against the repeal of the Affordable Care Act because everyone deserves quality, affordable health care, and health care is a right, not a privilege. And we know that no one should have to choose between paying for rent, buying groceries, and paying for their medical bills. And especially for low-income folks, this is an issue of life and death, and that the Affordable Care Act, repealing it, would have devastating consequences for over 20 million Americans. And as a young millennial myself, I know that coming out of college with a lot of student debt, I had a hard time finding a job when I first graduated, and I am so grateful that I had access to my parents' health insurance through the age of 26, thanks to the Affordable Care Act. So with the Long Island Progressive Coalition and the movement here on Long Island, we want to fight back against the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, but not only that, we want to fight to expand and improve the Affordable Care Act. And we want to make sure that everyone has access to the affordable care that they deserve. So we're fighting back against Trump's agenda, his destructive and hateful agenda, but we also want to build a progressive movement that has the power to fight for an economy that works for everyone. So we're proud to stand here with you all today, with the Long Island activists and other groups across the island. Folks are getting engaged in massive numbers, and we know that it's us showing up and holding our elected officials accountable is what it's going to take. And we know that Trump used race to pit working people against each other in this election and to divide each other. But at the end of the day, we will not stand for the ways that Trump and congressional Republicans are pitting people against each other and marginalizing, scapegoating marginalized communities. And instead, we're going to come together and build a powerful movement. How many folks here were part of the Women's March last month? That is absolutely. We are on the verge of a powerful movement. And from the Women's March last month to the actions at airports across the country to fight against the ban on the immigrants and Muslim communities, we are just seeing the very beginning of a sustained grassroots, powerful resistance movement, and Trump and the congressional Republicans have not yet seen it all yet. So from fighting for access to affordable quality health care to fighting for the dignity and rights of working people in our communities, we're going to fight back against Trump's hateful agenda and the failed neoliberal policies of corporate Republicans and Democrats alike. We're going to fight back against the gutting and hollowing out of public services, the privatization of key government agencies, and instead fight for a government that is for, of, and by the people. So here with the Long Island Progressive Coalition, we're fighting for quality health care, but we're also fighting for the things that we do want: affordable housing, clean energy, economic justice, racial justice, education reform, sustainable local economies. So you can also follow us at Long Island Progressive Coalition on Facebook and Twitter, as well as LIPC.org. But when we come together, when we fight together, we can kind of build the society and the economy that we want and we deserve. So we're going to keep building this Trump resistance movement, starting with fighting for the quality, affordable health care that we all deserve, and also moving towards building a progressive movement that has the power to hold our elected officials accountable and has elected officials coming out of our movements. So we need folks like you running for office at all levels. And at the end of the day, the fight for quality, affordable health care is about whether or not we are a compassionate society, whether or not we take care of each other, or we choose to leave people behind. And we refuse to allow Trump and the congressional Republicans to put the profits of pharmaceutical companies and the 1% above the health of our families and our communities. And when we come together, we can fight and we can win, so let's do this.
Thank you. Our next speaker is a Long Island resident who had the pleasure of living for several years in a mythical place that Republicans don't believe exists, where single payer actually exists and works every single day. Jennifer Greene is going to come talk to us about her experiences with single payer and how that compares to our system here.
Thank you so much, Ron. Wow, good afternoon. It is so good to see you all. I'm just going to take 3 minutes to tell you my story. I come to you from the Unitarian Universalist congregation of the Great South Bay in Sayville. So thank you for this chance to testify, because we have a strong tradition of fighting for justice. So in 1992, my husband's job took us to Vancouver, British Columbia, for 2 years. We had single payer. We lived it, and we loved it. To choose any doctor you like, and to be rid of billing, rid of deductibles, rid of copays, to be covered regardless of your age, job status, pre-existing conditions, personal wealth. It's no wonder that Canadians love their single-payer, universal health insurance system with private provision like nothing else. Maybe other than hockey. When we moved to Long Island, the unfairness and inefficiency of an increasingly corporatized healthcare system was pretty hard for me to take, since I knew there was a much better system. I was one of the lucky ones because I had coverage through my husband's job. But I felt angry, not lucky, to be part of such an unfair system. North of the border and all over the world, it's simply understood that to be a compassionate, enlightened society, there must be universal health coverage. We had continual problems with our coverage here in New York. In-network, out-of-network switcheroos, a thwarted pre-authorization attempt, first a merger and then a replacement of insurance companies, which brought changes in rules and preferred provider lists, not once but twice in 4 years. But none of that happens with single payer. When we were living in Vancouver, we were seeing the healthcare debate that was going on in the States at the time, and we saw the misinformation. It was being spread by the interests who are most threatened by single payer, the insurance industry. Anecdotes about the Canadian system became myths about the Canadian system. And as Ron said, we've heard the ones I'm talking about. Canadians have to wait for procedures, or they come to the US for care, or Canadian doctors are flocking to the US. Well, we can have dueling anecdotes, like the doctor I read about who did come to the US, but changed his mind and returned to Canada after finding out how discouraging it was to practice medicine in a setting where people's basic needs are not being met. Or the point that waiting is only for elective surgery. And to be fair, my story is just another anecdote, so don't take my testimony as the last word. I'm a fan of evidence. There is strong evidence on these matters, which we should use to counter the lies. But I know that personal experience is powerful, and I'm glad I could be here to share mine with you today. I'm glad to see this packed room. I'm glad to see your passion for justice. We have work to do, so let's do it.
All right, and we have one final speaker before we're going to break out into those Senate district groups. We have Dr. Martha Livingstone. She's a professor at SUNY Westbury, a professor of health policy. She's on the editorial board of the Journal of Public Health Policy and the vice chair of Physicians for a National Health Program. It sounds like she really knows what she's talking about, so let's bring her right up.
I frankly think everybody has said everything that I was going to say, so I'm not sure how much more I need to say. And we do want to get you into those groups and actually get you doing stuff, not just listening and clapping. Here's a sign from the New York Nurses Association. I don't know if you've seen this, but this is what I'm going to talk about. Beautiful. So, at the Women's March a month ago or so, there were signs that some people had that I felt I should have been carrying that said, "I can't believe I still have to be protesting this shit." I lived in Canada for a couple of years. In the 70s, I got one of my degrees up there, and I was blessed to meet with people who had actually brought their system, what they call Medicare, to Canada in the 1960s in the province of Saskatchewan, where I lived. I then got involved at the same time Jennifer was experiencing Canadian healthcare. I started to get involved with Physicians for a National Health Program in New York and other healthcare activist groups. And I can't believe we still don't have this. One of my mentors, a marvelous, the guy who's the editor of the Journal of Public Health Policy, wrote an article called "National Health Insurance in the United States, a Drama in Too Many Acts." Now, there's only two reasons we don't have single-payer, Medicare for all, national health insurance in the United States. One is, it's a sixth of the economy, and there's some very powerful people arrayed against us who will do everything in their power to persuade us that we can't have it. The other piece is our failure of imagination. But the fact is, Jennifer and I, and anybody who knows any Canadians or Brits or French people or whoever, we know whenever we go anywhere else in the world, people give us that pity look. What part of this don't you people get? Preferred provider panel, it's called All the Doctors in Canada. I wrote some stuff, I did some stuff about healthcare in Canada. I visited people, I talked to docs, I talked to policy people, I talked to regular folks. I remember talking to a woman who worked as a dietary aide in a nursing home in Victoria, BC, and her husband was a firefighter. They had lots of relatives in the US. She was complaining. She said, when my son, when he was a teenager, he had this problem. It was clearly a serious problem, and nobody could figure it out. We had to go to 5 doctors before somebody diagnosed my son's brain tumor. I said, see how my spin is, you could go to 5 doctors before you found the expert who knew the rare condition that your boy had, because in the States, he would have been one of the 45,000 Americans dead of treatable medical conditions because he didn't have access to timely medical care. He got the care, he's doing fine. And she said, you know, we had talked about moving down to the States. We have a lot of family there, but given our experience, there's no way. There's just no way. Speaking of pre-existing conditions, I just wanted to remind everybody in this room that life is a pre-existing condition resulting from sexual contact, and which will invariably end in death. So we all have a pre-existing condition. We all need health care. Why? Because we're human beings. Now, how are we going to get it? I personally don't like to get on the bad guy's turf and start talking about taxes. Frankly, when we talked about that, when Tom Suozzi just talked about these kind of cycles about caring for people or not caring for people, whatever, the fact is we don't mind paying taxes when they provide the things that we need. We are the 99%. Who doesn't want to pay taxes? It's the billionaires and zillionaires who want to keep it all. They want to keep it all. They want us to be uneducated, unhoused, unfed, and if we get sick, they'd like us to die because they need to keep all the money, and it is our life and death fight not to have that happen. Now, I just have 2 more things to say. One is, sure, we have to protect the Affordable Care Act. But frankly, my dears, does anybody remember that the Affordable Care Act was written by the Heritage Foundation, a right-wing think tank? It is a Republican plan first put into place by then Governor Mitt Romney in Massachusetts. See, we have 2 pieces of our healthcare system. We have the piece that's public, and by the way, the public funds the majority of our healthcare, and we have the piece that's private. And what Romney Care did, and then the Affordable Care Act, was to build on the wildly expensive private, for-profit sector of our system. We want to build on the wildly successful, inexpensively administered Medicare program. There's only 2 things wrong with Medicare. It doesn't cover everything, and it doesn't cover everybody. So that's why we say, love it, improve it, Medicare for all. That's our goal. There's 2 things that we need to be doing now. People keep saying, oh, well, Congress, you can't do anything with them. I would like to see, and I think you guys would like to see, Congressman Suozzi sign on to H.R. 676 and be a co-sponsor of Congressman John Conyers' Medicare for All bill, improved Medicare for All bill. He sounds very supportive. Let's get his name on that bill. We need all the co-sponsors we can get, not because we're going to pass it this year, because it isn't going to happen nationally this year. So that's one piece we need to work on, get his name on it, build it politically, get as many Congress people on it as we can. Bernie's got a companion bill in the Senate. Got to get on our senators too. But meanwhile, back in New York, we are one of a number of states really within sight of a state-based single-payer system. Let me remind you, because I know you all learned this a long time ago, I'm just kidding, that the province of Saskatchewan is the first place that had Medicare for all in 1962. By 10 years, 9 years after that, 1971, it had been implemented nationwide, province by province by province. Let's us be the first. Let's actually... We can compete with California. I'm okay racing California. We can do it. They may be bigger, but you know, we got some spunk that they lack. Let's go do it. And the bill is called, as you all know, you got the postcards and there are sign-up sheets out in the hall to sign up and get active on this. It's called New York Health. It is Medicare for all. It is improved Medicare for all, single payer. And what it will do for us in New York State is save us something like $50 billion, not chopped liver, and save everybody but the very wealthiest New Yorkers money over what we're currently paying for lousy access to care where we have narrow networks, where some insurance genius can tell us at any moment that no, really, if we looked at page 793 of you get the point. New York Health, Assemblymember Gottfried's and Senator Bill Perkins's bill gets rid of all of that stuff. And I loved Ron's line, there are no copays and deductibles for a human right, and we have to reinforce that. I think we can do this. I know we're not going to get the New York State Senate to pass it this year, but I bet you we can do it in 2018 if we hold their feet to the fire. So let's get active. Let's go do it. I want everybody to say it with me. Fight, fight, fight. Healthcare is a right. Fight. Healthcare is a right. Fight, fight, fight. Healthcare is a right. Fight, fight, fight. Healthcare is a right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Livingstone. Just while she was speaking, I couldn't help, my mind was racing over there. She was talking about the fact that we're going up against these millionaires and billionaires, this top 1% that we're always hearing about. And I don't have a lot of positive things to say about the top 1%, but there is one thing that I love about the top 1%. That's, by definition, we outnumber them 99-1. We're going to win this. We're going to win. All right, so we're about to break up into the groups. I'm going to call Christine Pellegrino to come speak right now. She's one of our steering committee members and a DNC delegate for Bernie Sanders.
Got to bring it way down. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I'm just going to wrap it up with a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'm going to send you off. So I just want to let you know that if you are residing in districts 1 and 2, you're going to meet with your group in the overflow room, which is kind of directly outside in the back. If you are in districts 3, 4, 5, or 6, you're going to meet here. If you are in districts 7, 8, or 9, you're going to head to the hallway. Your job is going to be to create some events that we can post on LongIslandActionEvents.org. Everybody should be able to check those events. And make sure that you are posting and hosting on that website. That's going to be our most important action item for today. And I just wanted to say that this whole event leaves me really hopeful. At the election of Donald Trump, it wasn't exactly a hopeful time, but I have to say that I am hopeful. I believe that this is not a matter of left versus right. I believe that this is a matter of right versus wrong, and we are on the right side. And today I want to send you off with some inspiration. I want you to chant with me. I want to invoke Reverend William Barber and his words. And his chant is, everybody forward, not one step back. Please say it with me. Everybody forward, not one step back. One more. Everybody forward, not one step back. I want to leave you with this one. Please reply. I believe. I believe that. I believe that we. I believe that we will. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. Stand up. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. Off you go.
Senate breakout groups. Senate breakout groups. At the last 5 minutes, we will announce when it's 5 minutes left. We are going to be reporting back what you and your group decide is going to be the action that you are putting on the calendar for this month, whether it's petitioning, whether it's flyering, whether it's going to town halls and collecting signatures. So just be aware, that's the goal. So please, in the last 5 minutes, have an action plan.
Okay, watch for signs, please. Districts 1 and 2 are heading to the overflow room. Districts 3, 4, 5, and 6 are staying here. Find your facilitator. Districts 7, 8, and 9 are going in the hallway. Please stay for the most important part of today.
Again, quiet for a second so people can hear. Districts 4, 5, and 6 are staying in this room. Districts 7, 8, and 9 are going out. And districts 1 and 2 are going in the overflow room behind this room to plan actions in district. Look at the signs around the room and find your district, and there'll be a facilitator to help you.
I would like to remind everybody to please fill out the postcards. We will come around and collect them, and they are going to be delivered to your state senators. So please fill out those cards, and we're going to collect them, and they will be delivered. You can do this in your groups.
Marcelino's people back there. If you're too crowded, there's more room up here in this opposite corner if you'd like.